Hi, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I want to talk about what's going on in UK politics and particularly to talk about Keir Starmer and whether or not he's going to last as the Prime Minister because there is a major scandal going on right now as a result of the Epstein files being released. So, Peter Mandelson, who was a MP back in 2004 but hasn't actually been a member of parliament for over 20 years, is at the heart of this storm. And he was actually brought back from the dead, from the political wilderness, by Keir Starmer in 2024 and appointed as the ambassador to the USA. And obviously, it's now come out that Peter Mandelson had a very close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He's obviously denying that. He's saying that he barely knew him, but there's lots of incriminating photos and evidence. And it's now come to light that there is a real possibility that Peter Mandelson actually provided market sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein when he was actually in prison. So after he'd been convicted for his sex offences. So there's a real question here as to whether or not Keir Starmer knew about any of this. He's obviously denied it. But if he did, then is he going to be able to continue as the UK Prime Minister? So I wanted to unpack some of this because I think everybody just assumes that we all know who Peter Mandelson is, what he's been doing, and that it was a bit of a no brainer that he was going to be appointed. But I don't think any of that is actually true. So in this video, I just want to go through some of the details and then talk about the Profumo affair that happened back in the 1960s, which most of us are probably too young to remember any of that. But there are some direct comparables here in terms of the Prime Minister at that time actually resigned as a result of that scandal. So I'll go through a bit of information on that as well. But just before we get started, let's hear from Keir Starmer himself, who yesterday said this in the House of Commons.
Mandelson betrayed our country, our parliament, and my party. Mr. Speaker, he lied repeatedly to my team when asked about his relationship with Epstein before and during his tenure as ambassador. I regret appointing him. If I knew then what I know now, he would never have been anywhere near government.
So Keir Starmer was quite categorical there that he's basically saying that Mandelson should never been involved. But the thing is, Keir Starmer actually brought him back. He wasn't part of the setup when Keir Starmer took over in the government. He actually personally decided to bring him back and put him into a very senior political position. So this was on Keir Starmer himself. He wasn't just changing around all of the different people and he had to deal with Mandelson because he was already there. He wasn't. He hadn't been part of the government since 2010 when Gordon Brown's Labour Party lost the last election. Now, in terms of who Peter Mandelson is, well, he was born in 1953, so he's in his 70s, so he's not a young man. So it's not somebody that Keir Starmer was bringing back because he's at the cutting edge of what's happening right now. And actually, he became famous back at the time when Tony Blair became Prime Minister as part of what was regarded as New Labour at that time. He was seen as being one of the key figures in New Labour in terms of dealing with the media. And the reason why is because he was a media guy. So he doesn't have a career in finance prior to coming into politics. He was actually in the media. He went to Oxford, studied PPE for anybody that's interested in all of that. He's quite posh. Now, Mandelson was an MP for Labour up until 2004 when he resigned and took on the role of European Commissioner. So basically, he was involved in dealing with trade with Europe. And that was a very well-paid role that was part of the government-wider setup, but wasn't actually an elected MP. Now, interestingly, when Gordon Brown took over from Tony Blair after Tony Blair had to resign as part of the whole weapons of mass destruction that never actually existed, Gordon Brown was struggling in terms of popularity because he wasn't actually an elected Prime Minister. He just took over the role within the Labour Party. And in order to try to improve the quality of the people around him, he actually went out of his way to get Peter Mandelson a peerage. So he became a member of the House of Lords And as a member of the House of Lords, he was then able to form part of the UK cabinet. So he became business secretary. So that's the reason why Peter Mandelson is now a Lord. It wasn't because he was given it as part of some other peerage discussions. It was actually because Gordon Brown wanted him to be a member of his cabinet. So that was a backdoor way of doing that. And there's been a lot of coverage recently in terms of whether or not Peter Mandelson should maintain his position in the House of Lords. I think he won't. Keir Starmer's come out and said that he's had a meeting with King Charles and that will be removed, but there is a process involved with that. Now, when Labour lost the election in 2010, Peter Mandelson was no longer part of the government, and he hasn't been since that time. He actually formed his own company. It was a sort of advisory company, and that's what he's been doing for the past 14, 15 years. However, when Labour won the election in the summer of 2024, Keir Starmer decided that he needed somebody with clout and connections to be the ambassador to the United States. And so he offered the role to Peter Mandelson, and he was appointed in December of 2024. So that represented a 14-year gap between when Labour lost the last election and being appointed. So, as I've said, Keir Starmer wasn't in a position where he had to just deal with Mandelson because he was part of the senior team. He actually made the personal decision to bring him back. And this is where the question of whether or not Keir Starmer will resign and will he survive this whole scandal arises, because there was no reason other than because Keir Starmer decided that Peter Mandelson was the right man for the job. Now, even in December 2024, people were aware of Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And Keir Starmer has said that he questioned him and he lied about the level of relationship that the two had had. But the fact of the matter is that they had some relationship, and Keir Starmer was aware of that. Now, we're talking about a convicted felon in the USA. He was convicted for trafficking girls under 18 years of age, so technically a child sex offence. He'd been sent to prison. And obviously, it's now come to light that Peter Mandelson continued to have a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted. So this is where all of the problems are now rising. And also, it's now come to light that Mandelson was giving him sensitive information whilst he was a member of the government back at the time of Gordon Brown's government. Now, in terms of whether or not there are any historic precedents around this subject, I mentioned at the start of today's video that back in the 1960s, there was a scandal that has direct comparables to this situation. An MP at the time called John Profumo had an affair with a woman called Christine Keeler. And the reason why that was scandalous wasn't because he had an affair, but Christine Keeler was also having a relationship with a KGB intelligence officer. And so there were a lot of questions raised as to whether or not any pillow talk could lead to security risks for the UK government. Now, John Profumo was asked about this, and he denied that he was having any sort of relationship with Christine Keeler. And the Prime Minister at the time, Harold Macmillan, backed him. And then subsequently, when it came out that Profumo was lying, then Harold Macmillan was under a lot of pressure, similar to what's going on with Keir Starmer at the moment. Now, he didn't actually resign as a direct result of this scandal, but he did resign very shortly thereafter due to ill health. And interestingly, Harold Macmillan was a Conservative Prime Minister, so the Conservatives were in power. And as a result of him resigning, there was a general election and Labour won that election. So there was a change of government as a direct result of this scandal. Now, the current situation is actually a reversal of that situation. We've got a Labour government that's in power, and the Conservatives are now calling this out and basically saying that Keir Starmer should never have appointed Peter Mandelson. So clearly, the Conservatives would like to see Keir Starmer removed from power, because that would then throw a huge question mark over the credibility of the Labour government going forward. Keir Starmer's already lost his deputy, Angela Rayner, who was in power at the start of the Labour government. She had to go as a result of not being entirely honest about property that she owned in Brighton, and she was the housing secretary at the time. So she decided that she had to resign from the cabinet. So Labour's already had a few scandals around this issue, and it is interesting that Keir Starmer is now distancing himself from Peter Mandelson as if this was nothing to do with me, Governor, when actually he was the one who brought him back. There was no reason for Peter Mandelson to be any part of the Labour government other than the fact that Keir Starmer wanted him to be. He wanted somebody who had the gravitas and who had sort of a history with the Labour Party to come in and help him, particularly with the US relations, which is clearly a very important trade relationship from the UK's perspective. The US economy is the largest in the world, as we all know. So he put him into a very prominent position at a time when all of these Epstein files were being released. And obviously, that's come back to bite Keir Starmer very badly on the bum. So the question I wanted to raise in this video is whether or not Keir Starmer will survive this current situation. Well, interestingly, in a debate yesterday at the House of Commons, Keir Starmer said that the files relating to the appointment around Peter Mandelson couldn't actually be released. They needed to be redacted. There was then a 6-hour debate on this topic led by Angela Rayner, who was the former deputy of the Labour Party. So she was Keir Starmer's right-hand woman at the time when Labour won the election and when Peter Mandelson was appointed. She was actually saying that these files needed to be released and they're now going to be reviewed, and subsequently, I think we will see that information. And that could be a real problem for Keir Starmer, because if it comes out that he was more aware than he's currently acknowledging of the situation between Mandelson and Epstein, then I think there's going to be a lot of pressure applied against him. And there is a genuine possibility that Keir Starmer could be removed, he could resign, or something could happen in terms of a vote of no confidence if it comes to light that he was fully aware of the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, obviously, nobody knows exactly what's in that information yet, but it will come out at some point in the next few weeks or months. And it's going to be a very shaky situation from Keir Starmer's point of view. So I wanted to really just make this video to bring you up to speed, to put you in the picture, because I think the media coverage of this story assumes that everybody knows who Peter Mandelson is, why he was appointed, what's going on with regards to the Epstein situation, and also what's happened in the past. So I just wanted to fill in some of the blanks if you're not fully aware of the current situation, and to really raise the issue that Keir Starmer is genuinely under a lot of pressure here. He could be removed as the PM at some point in the near future. And if that happens, I think that would be a devastating blow for Labour, because they're already struggling with regards to the economy. Things haven't gone to plan since they took over the government in the summer of 2024. And I think if they lost their leader, then that could potentially trigger a general election, because we've seen this in the past when a new prime minister takes over as a result of a change internally in the party. That never really works with the UK population. They don't see that new leader as somebody that they voted into power. And so their credibility is already undermined before they've even taken on the job. But I wanted to make this video really just to bring you up to speed. Also, just to post another UK video, because I know a lot of people like me talking about the UK. So if you're one of those people, can you please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and also give me a thumbs up for this video. Thank you so much for everybody to watching this video all the way through to the end. Hopefully you found it useful, informative, and thought-provoking. That's what I'm trying to do, provoke some thoughts. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Don't forget, I'm currently running my competition whereby you can win my property located close to one of the best beaches in the UK, or £250,000. But in order to get to that figure, I need people to buy some tickets. It's another way of supporting the channel. That's why I'm doing it. So if you'd like to get involved and support me, then please have a look at the QR code on the screen now, or click the link in the description below. Thank you for everybody who's supported me in other ways. If you bought me a coffee, or sent me a YouTube super thanks, or signed up as a patron or a member, really, really appreciate that support. Thank you so much. And here's something to put a smile on your face.